Hey guys, this is Chaplain Bo Willette with a quick Good Friday video for you. And Good Friday is the recognition of the historical event of Christ suffering, Jesus' suffering. Christ just means Messiah. But it is a recognition of that historical event. And the time we call Easter is really the commemoration of the resurrection and that historical event. And Good Friday is usually that thing that's kind of, the sad day, right? I mean, the suffering of Jesus. If you've ever read about the suffering of Jesus, no one likes to see someone get tortured, and that can be a real brutal thing to behold. And that's why it's so sad, because a lot of us, we look at the suffering of Christ. You might have watched The Passion before, that Mel Gibson movie. Man, that is on spot. That is a good flick to watch and just take in the barbarity that we are as human beings to inflict on one another. Pretty intense. But that's what Good Friday is about. It's good because Jesus' sacrifice means something. It's an amazing demonstration of passion. That's why the suffering of Christ is called the Passion of Christ, because Jesus' love was passionate. He did something for people, and he did it with passion. What's your passion like? What's my passion like? Is it that, am I that passionate for someone that I'm willing to die for them? Is that how my passion is? Man, already kind of a mind blower, right? Something to think about and go, man, what is my passion like? Well, Good Friday is that, again, recognition of the historical event of the suffering of Jesus. There's some wonderful papers, by the way. I think the Medical Association or the Journal of American Medicine or something like that put out a report on the suffering of Christ and what it was like. Medical Journal of America, I forget anyway, but it was really cool. It was a really neat article on all the details of what Jesus went through on that cross as far as his physical body and what that body went through. Meaning when people were executed on a cross, on a pole, your body went through various sufferings, different kinds of sufferings than, say, someone who died in a car crash or someone who died of just a brain aneurysm or something like that. The cross had with it its own specific type of suffering and trial. So let me read some scriptures to you that really kind of talk about the suffering of Christ and its impact on our lives. So this says, Christ, who suffered for you as our example. So Jesus laid down us an example of his passion, his love for us. To think that you're going to do something for someone and they might not even be aware of it, but that you have to literally lay down your life for them in order for that to get accomplished. Man, that's a love that's pretty radical, pretty big. It says, Jesus who suffered for us is our example. Laying down my life for my spouse, laying down my life for my friends, laying down my life maybe even for my enemies, right? Loving my enemies, caring for those who even spite me, but loving them, helping me, God, praying for them, being a human being that loves other human beings, that kind of thing. Jesus is my example. He laid down his life for the righteous and for the unrighteous. Amazing, right? That kind of love. So it says, follow in his steps. Let's follow him. It says he never sinned. He never told a lie. He never answered back when he was insulted. And when he suffered, he did not threaten to get even. So he wasn't that kind of guy who, when he was threatened, he said, man, I'm going to get back at you kind of idea, right? It says he left his case in the hands of God, who always judges fairly. Jesus always said, God, you judge them. You be the one to judge them. God, his Father, you judge them. I, the Son, will love them. Isn't that amazing? The Son is going to love. And he says, Father, I commit to you judgment. Now, this is important for us. Because sometimes you want to get revenge. Sometimes you're bitter. Sometimes you're bummed. Sometimes you're mad at your spouse. Sometimes you're mad at your family members and you want to get at them. But you know what we can do? We can commit judgment, the judgment we want to do, over to God. Now, this gives you a lot of peace in your life because instead of you holding on to all that bitterness and resentment and all that stuff that you want to do and all that anger and all that yuck, and you can't change anybody, right? You know that. You can't change anybody. You can't force your dad to be a certain way or your mom to be a certain way or your sisters or brothers or whoever. You can't change anybody. What you got to do is to have some peace anyways. You have to be able to give all that judgment and say, hey, God, I believe you can judge them far greater than me. So I'm going to give you that judgment. I'm going to hand it over to you and you judge them. You judge them as you see fit. When you want to, you judge them, you do whatever you need to do in their life. But I'm going to give you that, God. I just give you my heart of bitterness and all the yuck that's in me. And you judge them. I believe, I trust that you're able to deal with them far greater than me, so I give them to you. See, if you really believe that, if you really believe God is able to judge people, then guess what? You don't even have to do it anymore. You can relinquish. Oh, good word, huh? Kind of a kickback word. Relinquish. It sounds almost a little bit like rest, right? To relinquish all your, quote, right to get back, to get at. So when Jesus was suffering on that cross, Jesus was saying, hey, Father, you judge the world. I am going to love the world. I'm going to lay down my life. Everybody's got a role to play, right? The Son's got a role to play. The Father's got a role to play. You guys know about roles because you got a role to play, right? You can't play every role. You got to do your role, right? That's right. It'd be a mess if you tried to do everybody's role. It couldn't get done. It couldn't get done well, that's for sure. Everybody's got a role to play. Well, the Son's got a role to love. The Father's got a role, and that's to judge. And that's a good thing. We have a Son who loves and is going to judge, or going to give judgment over to the Father, and he's going to do something. He's going to bear our sins in his body. That's what it's going to say. So it says he never lied. He never did anything wrong. And then it says he personally carried the load of our sins in his own body. So I just said that, right? He carried, could you imagine carrying the load of all of our sins on your own body, in your own body, the burden of your own mess ups can be heavy. Think of carrying everybody's burden, right? And it says he personally carried the load of our sins in his own body when he died on the cross. So this is what we commemorate, this suffering, this dying on the cross. Now it says he did this so we can be finished with sin and live a good life from now on. So he did this so we can now no longer, in a sense, be a slave to sin. We can no longer be a slave to all the things that burden us. See, Jesus has taken all of our punishment that we deserve, all the judgment that we deserve from the Father. Isn't that crazy? The Father's role is to judge, but guess who took the penalty for us? That's what Jesus has come to do, is take the punishment that we deserve upon himself. See, when you're a father, if you did not ever judge, you wouldn't be a really good father, would you? You'd let everybody in your house. You let people take advantage of your children, right? Because you wouldn't judge anybody. But to be a righteous parent, you need to make judgments. It's just a fact. You just got to be able to say, hey, that's wrong, and do that. And you know what? If the kids are getting out of control, the parent needs to be able to judge them and make good judgments to say, hey, you can't do that. You need to be punished for this. You need to be corrected for this. And so I'm going to lay down a punishment, a correction, a corrective measure to help you to understand something very valuable, that if I don't do this, you will not understand the value of something, whether it's the value of love or honor or courage or honesty, the virtues. You won't know the virtues unless there is a judgment. Now, sometimes in our world, because people are so afraid of judgment, they've moved away from judging, or they say they have. But what they've done, what happens in a society that pulls away from judgment and judging people in right ways, is the people lose virtue, right? The only way we learn things that are virtuous is if they're valued. And the only way we know they're valued is if there's judgments being made, right? Hey, you're going to be punished now for this because murdering's wrong. You can't murder. Why? Because we're valuing the virtue of what? Life, right? Of loving people, of caring for people. See, if I don't make the judgment and I don't say, hey, the murderer is going to have to go to jail, then I'm not really upholding the virtue of caring for human beings, that we shouldn't be murdering. So you see how, as a parent, we have to lay down judgments. That's the way we show kindness and love. That's how we show those virtues that they're valuable, right? Well, the Father in heaven is going to lay down his judgment. But what if someone takes that judgment for you? Who can bear the punishment of God? Ooh, that's pretty heavy. But this is what Jesus has come to do. It says he carried the load of our sins in his own body when he died on the cross, so that we are no longer going to have to deal with this sin thing. Now, we might still sin, but guess what? Our sin has been paid for. The Father has laid all of the judgment that we will ever deserve on his Son. His Son volitionally, voluntarily, on his own desire, did it. And he did it with joy in his heart. He laid down his life with joy. He loved you and me. Dude, that's radical. And that is super amazing. That God so loved the world that he would give his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. Man, that's an example that just keeps giving and giving and giving. So that's a little bit of what the Passion of Christ is all about and what this Good Friday is all about. So you guys take care, okay? Have a great one. Bye-bye.